A gun pointed at point-blank range. A secret that's about to blow up 2 families at once. And a warning built right into the marketing. Nobody on this show is getting out clean. This is the Cheese Season 8 Episode 9, and if the trailer is telling the truth, somebody's story ends here. Let's start with the part of this trailer that should worry you the most, because it isn't the gun, and it isn't the fighting. It's a conversation. A quiet one. Emmett pulls Darnell aside, and you can tell just from his face that whatever he's about to say has been sitting on him for weeks. He tells Darnell there's something he has to tell Kesha. That's it. That's the line. But if you've been paying attention all season, you already know exactly what that something is, and it's the kind of truth that doesn't stay contained once it's out. For 9 episodes now, the show has been building toward this exact moment. Kesha has been kept in the dark about what actually happened to Nuck, while almost everyone around her has known some version of the truth. Emmett has known. Victor has known. Tiffany definitely knows, because depending on how you read the season, she may be the reason Nuck isn't around anymore in the first place. And that's what makes this trailer moment so heavy. This isn't just Emmett confessing to clear his conscience. This is Emmett potentially handing Kesha a truth that's going to force her to choose a side, and there's no version of that choice that doesn't end with somebody getting hurt. Think about what Kesha actually has to weigh here. On one side, there's Tiffany, someone she's had a real relationship with, someone who's been in her corner. On the other side is the truth about a man's death, and possibly a truth about the person who caused it. That is not a small thing to carry into a friendship. And based on the way this trailer shows Kesha's face later on, looking like she's holding back tears, it's fair to guess that whatever conversation happens next, it does not go well for anybody involved. Now here's where it gets more dangerous. Because if Kesha does go to Tiffany with this, she's not just having an emotional conversation. She's potentially confronting someone who has already shown she'll do whatever it takes to protect herself. And this season has made one thing very clear about Tiffany. She has changed. The woman who spent half this show looking for justice for Rob has slowly turned into someone capable of real violence, someone willing to let another person take the fall for what she's done. That's not a small shift. That's a full transformation, and it's one of the more underrated character arcs this season, because it happened gradually enough that you almost don't notice how far she's drifted until you see her holding a gun again in this trailer, ready, by the looks of it, to use it. So who is she aiming at? The obvious guess is Bakari, and honestly, the show has been setting that up for a while now. He's been way too comfortable sticking around Tiffany given everything that's happened, and comfort like that usually gets punished on this show. If Tiffany's endgame really is making sure someone else takes the blame for what she did to Nuck, Bakari is the easiest name on the list. He's close to her, he's tangled up in her business, and he's exactly the kind of loose end a person in her position would want gone. But there's another read here worth considering. What if the gun isn't about Nuck at all? What if it's about self-preservation in a completely different direction, aimed at whoever she thinks is closing in on her fastest? Because right now, that list is getting longer by the episode. Which brings us to the other side of this story, the side wearing a badge. Detective Toussaint has not let up, and this trailer makes that painfully clear. She's shown sitting across from a judge, laying out her case, and the working theory is that she's building toward the idea that Tiffany killed her informant. That informant, of course, is Nuck. If that theory gets legs, if a judge signs off on whatever she's asking for, Tiffany's carefully built cover story could start falling apart fast. And based on what we see later in the trailer, it looks like that's exactly what's happening. Officers going through a safe. Money being pulled out. What looks like a search of Tiffany's own place. If that's a warrant being executed, this isn't a minor inconvenience for her. This is the walls closing in. And that's when we hear her say it herself, sharp and defensive, that she's not taking the fall for this. Whatever this is, it's clearly bigger than one bad decision. It sounds like a woman who knows exactly how much trouble she's in and is already planning who she's going to sacrifice to get out of it. Now let's shift to the backyard problem, because if you've been watching this season closely, you know exactly what's buried there, and you know exactly why it's the single biggest threat to Tiffany's entire plan. A body doesn't stay hidden forever, especially not with a detective actively pushing for warrants and search teams already inside the house. If law enforcement decides to expand that search past the walls and start digging outside, there is no story, no excuse, and no version of events that saves her. This is the kind of loose end that has probably kept her up at night all season, and based on this trailer, her time to fix it might be running out. That brings us to Bakari, and honestly, his situation might be the most frustrating one to watch unfold. Everyone around him, including Len, is telling him to get out while he still can. In the trailer, she flat out asks him what happens if Tiffany decides to do something to him, and his answer is basically don't worry about it. That's not reassurance, that's denial. Bakari has had multiple chances to walk away from Tiffany's orbit, and every time, he chooses to stay a little longer. On a show like this, staying close to someone who's already proven she'll let other people take the blame for her actions is not a neutral decision. It's a gamble, and the odds are not in his favor. Whether he becomes the fall guy Tiffany needs, or whether he becomes something worse, the writing has been building toward a moment where his choice to stay finally catches up with him. Then there's Rashad, and his role in all of this deserves more attention than it's getting. Earlier this season, he was in the right place at the wrong time, catching bits of a conversation between Victor and Emmett about what really happened to Nuck. That's not a small detail. That means Rashad is sitting on information that could blow this entire situation wide open, whether he realizes the full weight of it or not. The question is what he does with it. Does he stay quiet and protect himself, especially with his history and the risk of landing back in prison? Or does his loyalty to Alicia's memory push him toward doing something reckless, something that puts him directly in the path of people who have already shown they're willing to make problems disappear? If this season is being honest about its own tagline, "No one is safe," then Rashad holding onto a secret this big makes him one of the most exposed people on the show right now, whether the trailer wants to admit it or not. Now let's talk about the Emmett and Shay situation, because underneath all the tension and danger, this is really a story about a kid caught in the middle. Devonte has actually come a long way this season. He started off angry, guarded, and honestly kind of lost, but being around Emmett, spending time at the community center, connecting with Riley, and getting real mentorship from Rashad, changed something in him. He's calmer. He's more open. He's around kids his own age instead of situations that were pulling him toward trouble. That kind of progress doesn't happen overnight, and it definitely doesn't happen without consistency, which is exactly what Emmett has been trying to give him. So when the trailer shows Shay coming back, saying she's not giving up her child, it hits differently than a simple custody dispute. This isn't just two parents arguing over schedules. This is a real question about what's actually best for Devonte at this point in his life. Shay is his mother, and that bond matters, there's no erasing that. But stability matters too, and right now, Emmett seems to be the one providing it. The hope here isn't that one parent wins and the other loses. The hope is that they find some kind of middle ground, because Devonte needs both of them, just in the right balance. Whether the show is willing to give these two an actual compromise, or whether it's setting up another blow-up for the sake of drama, is something we'll only know once the episode actually airs. And then there's Jake, quietly falling apart in the background while everyone else is dealing with guns and investigations. Losing his mother has clearly hit him harder than he's letting on, and the trailer moment with Desiree tells you everything you need to know. She tells him he needs time to grieve, and he snaps back that he doesn't need to be told what he needs. That's not anger at her. That's a man who isn't ready to sit with his own pain yet, and is pushing away the one person trying to help him process it. It's a smaller storyline compared to everything else happening this episode, but it might end up being one of the more emotionally honest moments in the whole hour, because grief doesn't wait for a convenient time, and Jake is learning that the hard way. Let's talk about Reg and Candace for a second, because their moment in this trailer is quieter than everything else we've covered, but it might actually be one of the more telling scenes once the episode airs. The two of them are shown close, comfortable, like something heavy just happened and they came out the other side of it together. That could mean a few different things. Maybe Reg has finally started repairing things with his brothers, which would be a genuinely good outcome after a season full of tension in that family. Or maybe this closeness with Candace is less about resolution and more about leaning on each other because everything else around them is falling apart. Either way, there's still one thread hanging over both of them that the trailer doesn't address at all, and that's Alicia's coat. That detail was never just a random object. It represented guilt, evidence, and a decision neither of them has fully answered for yet. With only 2 episodes left, the show either has to bring that back in a real way, or it's choosing to let it quietly disappear, and honestly, given how carefully this season has been about paying off small details, it feels more likely that it's not done with them yet. Now here's a name that hasn't come up much this trailer, and that's exactly why it's worth mentioning. Roslyn. She's been noticeably absent for a while now, and with only 2 episodes left in the entire series, there's a real chance she doesn't factor back in at all. But shows like this rarely leave a character with unfinished business sitting untouched forever, especially one tied so closely to Emmett's past. Whether she shows up as a small callback or stays gone for good, her absence itself has become part of the story at this point. All of this brings us to the bigger picture, because Episode 9 isn't just building toward one dramatic moment. It's building toward the final stretch of the entire series. Based on where these storylines are heading, Episode 10 is shaping up to be the kind of finale that brings people back, not just plotlines. There's been talk of a wedding, which would be a fitting way to close things out on a hopeful note after a season this heavy. And if the show is serious about giving longtime fans a real send-off, there's a strong chance we see some familiar faces return, characters who've been gone for a while but never really left the emotional core of this story. Whether that includes someone like Kevin remains to be seen, but with a series finale on the horizon, the door is wide open for exactly that kind of moment. What makes Episode 9 so tense isn't just the guns, or the investigations, or the secrets finally coming out. It's the fact that every single storyline we've talked about today is colliding at the same time. Kesha is about to learn a truth that could break her friendship with Tiffany. Tiffany is cornered by a detective who isn't backing down. Bakari is one bad decision away from becoming a casualty of someone else's mess. Rashad is holding on to information heavy enough to change everything. Devonte is stuck between two parents who both love him but can't agree on what that love should look like. And Jake is quietly grieving while the rest of the neighborhood spirals around him. None of these stories exist in isolation anymore. They're all pressing against each other at once, and that's exactly why this episode carries so much weight heading into the finale. That's the thing about this show that's always set it apart. It was never really about the crime, or the danger, or even the drama for its own sake. It was about people trying to hold on to each other while everything around them made that harder and harder to do. Kesha trying to protect the people she loves without knowing the full truth. Emmett trying to be a father while carrying guilt he can't fully let go of. Jake trying to survive a loss he isn't ready to face. That's what's kept people watching for 8 seasons, and it's exactly why this final stretch feels so personal. With only 2 episodes left, there's a real chance not everyone makes it to the end the same way they started. Some relationships are going to break. Some secrets are finally going to cost something. And based on everything this trailer is hinting at, nobody is walking away from this untouched. So now it's your turn. Who do you think Tiffany is really pointing that gun at? Is Bakari finally out of chances, or is someone else about to pay the price for her mistakes? Drop your predictions in the comments, because I want to know exactly what you're expecting heading into this episode. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you in the next one. Now let's step back for a second, because before Episode 9 even airs, it's worth talking about where this season actually stands, because Season 8 has been a different kind of ride compared to what longtime fans are used to. This isn't a season that's been leaning on one big flashy storyline to carry it. Instead, it's been quietly stacking smaller decisions, one on top of another, until they've all started to collide at once, and that's honestly a harder thing to pull off than people give it credit for. What's worked really well this season is the way guilt has been used almost like its own character. Nobody on this show is innocent anymore, not in the way some of them used to be. Emmett isn't the same guy who was just trying to keep his restaurant afloat a few seasons back. Tiffany isn't the same woman who was purely a victim looking for justice. Even Rashad, who spent so much of the show trying to rebuild his life the right way, is now sitting on information that could unravel everything. That slow moral erosion has been one of the strongest threads all season, because it didn't happen through one big twist. It happened gradually, episode by episode, until you look up and realize almost everyone is compromised in some way. Where the season has been a little shakier is pacing. Some storylines, like the Reg and Candace situation with Alicia's coat, got set up with a lot of weight early on and then went quiet for stretches at a time, which makes moments like their trailer appearance feel a little disconnected from where we last left them. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's noticeable, especially in a final season where every thread really needs to land with purpose. The same goes for Rosalind's disappearance. Her absence has been so complete that it almost feels like the writers are hoping people forget she exists, and for a show that's usually pretty deliberate about its callbacks, that's a little out of character. That said, the character work with Devonte has genuinely been one of the season's highlights, and it doesn't always get talked about enough. Watching him go from angry and shut off to actually building real relationships with people like Riley and Rashad has felt earned rather than rushed, and it's given the show so much needed warmth in a season that's otherwise been pretty heavy on tension and danger. It's a reminder that this show has always been at its best when it's focused on people trying to grow, not just people trying to survive. Tiffany's arc, though, is probably the most debated part of the season, and for good reason. Turning her from a grieving, justice-seeking presence into someone capable of real violence is a bold choice, and it mostly works because the show didn't rush it. But it also means the audience's relationship with her has completely flipped, and depending on how episode 9 and 10 handle her ending, this could either go down as one of the show's more memorable transformations or feel like it went a little too far, too fast. Overall, heading into these final 2 episodes, Season 8 has done a solid job of making every relationship feel like it has something at stake, which is exactly what a final season should do. It hasn't been perfect, some threads deserved more screen time, and a couple of characters have been sidelined a little too long, but the emotional core of the show, people trying to protect each other while their own choices keep making that harder, has stayed intact. And honestly, that's probably the best way for this series to go out, not with one clean, tidy resolution, but with the same messy human tension that's defined it from the very beginning.